Yo, what's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Hit that like button as you come in. Say what's up. Tell me where you watching from. It's a Wednesday, y'all, and we live. Welcome to the daily live stream. So, I hope you guys are having a good week thus far. We got a couple things to react to today. Wednesday, middle of the week. We almost done, right? We almost done. It's the middle of the week. Of course, I love my phone. All right, y'all, give me a minute. Can't do nothing about that. Can't do nothing about it being dead, right, Chad? All right, y'all, say what's up as you come in. What we got today? I think we got like a good 5 clips I'm going to react to today. On top of the clip we always in the live stream with. We're going to end the live with Cliff today. So, with that being said, guys, happy Wednesday, April 16th, 2025, on a Wednesday. Welcome to Cozy Corner TV, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Kieran Smith. Call me Q. And we are on the corner. We on the corner, guys. So, it's the middle of the week. We got 2 days left. We almost there, y'all. We almost there. So, as per usual, I'm going to jump in and we're going to go over what we will be digesting today. As I always tell you guys, make sure you're grounded and regulated because news can be triggering. And if you're not, you should watch this later on. But if you are grounded and regulated, welcome to the live stream. Alright, guys, so first up on the menu, we got the Daily Signal. Shout out to them. Victor Davis Hanson. Governor Janet Mills, that is the governor of Maine, doesn't know it yet, but she's an insurrectionist. So Victor Davis Hanson is going to go over, it's funny because you don't really see this type of term used unless maybe we're talking about Civil War time frame, antebellum. But he's going to go over a couple of things and some of those things I just mentioned. So he's going to talk a little bit about the governor of Maine. Then we're going to switch gears and jump over to Fox News. Political insanity. Newsome mocked for Trump tariff lawsuit. You know, I was hoping that Gavin Newsome didn't do this. Like, maybe, I don't know. Maybe he just said that he was thinking about it, but it's not in the works yet. Because I know I covered this on a live stream probably like a month ago now. But I know President Trump or just his administration in general, they probably have like 120 lawsuits against them right now. It's probably more than that since I last covered it. But nonetheless, Gavin Newsome did it. He did what I didn't want him to do, and he's suing his own president, guys. He's suing his own president. And I mean, this is just the type of buffoonery that drives me crazy with Americans. I'm not saying that the president does everything right, but this is what I mean by entitled Americans. And I can say that as somebody who's fought for the country, because I'm going to tell you right now, if you think people in other countries are just getting upset with their leader because they don't agree with them, and then they're like, I'm going to take you to court. Yeah, right. Only in America. I'm telling you. Then we'll switch gears, guys, and we're going to jump over to Senator John Kennedy. Kennedy, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. So Senator John Kennedy is talking to Jake Tapper about some of the tariffs that President Trump has put out there globally and on China, and he's asking a lot of questions, like why is he moving so recklessly? How does Senator Kennedy feel about these tariffs and when it comes to his everyday citizens and how it might affect them affording everyday essentials? So Jay Tapper talks a little bit about that. There are some things he tries to say that Kennedy kind of intercedes and corrects him, which I appreciated. So we'll take a look at that. Then we're going to switch gears over back to Fox News. I'm going to read a small article here that's titled, Trump Administration Refers New York Attorney General Letitia James for possible prosecution over all allegations of mortgage fraud. So there that is. And I knew this was going to be bad because the AG in New York, if you guys remember anything about this, when President Trump was being prosecuted before he was serving his second term, I mean, it was pretty bad. I mean, other than AG Letitia James, I know there was, her name's not coming to me right now, but I believe she's from Georgia. But I know there were at least 2 to 3 states, and maybe Florida being the other one, where the prosecution was just downright nasty. And for something like this to come out, and it's about Letitia James, I'm like, with right now with Trump's administration in office, it's not looking the best. She made a statement saying she's not going to be bullied by a group of people that want to weaponize government, but that's not what's happening here. So we're going to take a look at that. It says Turley, the irony is crushing. The irony here is crushing. So that's regarding Letitia James. Then we'll jump back over to Fox News, where Sean Hannity and Stephen A. Smith are having a conversation pertaining to Stephen A. Smith considering the presidency. It says Stephen A. Smith spars with Hannity over White House run consideration. And then we will end our live stream, as we do every single night, with a clip from Cliff Buell. If you guys get a chance, go check Cliff's channel out. He's a YouTube content creator who focuses on Christian content. So I usually end my live stream with him every single night. Shout out to you, Cliff. If it wasn't for you, my guy, I wouldn't be able to end my live stream in a way that gives God glory. So I appreciate you. If it's not Cliff, it's usually another YouTube content creator that covers content or is a Christian, but most of the time I stick with Cliff because I like his form of YouTube shorts, but sometimes we switch it up. Last night we had Tim Ross on here. Shout out to Upset the World Studios. All right, guys, so with that being said, let's jump into our first clip of the night. We got Victor Davis Hanson. Governor Janet Mills doesn't know it yet, but she's an insurrectionist. Let's take a listen.
I want to wade into a very controversial topic. I want to be very careful. Donald Trump issued an executive order saying that only biological women that remain women compete in women's sports. Janet Mills, the governor of Maine, in the White House said she was going to resist that, and she's resisting. Janet Mills may not know it, but she's an insurrectionist. She's a neo-Confederate. She is taking states' rights to the extreme. And in the 1850s, the antebellum South said, we're not going to listen to the federal government. The federal government said, then you're in insurrectionary mode. And we know what happened. Rather than saying, I oppose the federal government, I will go to court to stop you, but if I lose, I will comply because the states are subordinate to the federal. She's not doing that. She's right in the spirit of the old Confederacy.
All right, so I'm going to go past that intro right there so we can get to right to him talking.
Hello, this is Victor Davis Hanson for the Daily Signal. I want to wade into a very controversial topic. I want to be very careful. It's the issue whether biological men who have transitioned to the female gender should compete in male sports, and what is the reaction of those who say they should versus the federal government under Trump's executive orders that said it's not fair to women. And the locus classicus, or the state, is the best example is now Janet Mills, the governor of Maine, in the White House said she was going to resist that. Donald Trump issued an executive order saying that all sports programs in the public sphere have to make sure that only biological women that remain women compete in women's sports, and the same as for male sports. And she's resisting this, and is the California legislature, and apparently Gavin Newsome, and are a lot of blue states. There's two fundamental issues we should all watch here. Number one, do states have the right to resist the federal government? Donald Trump says they don't, and he has threatened to cut off massive federal funds to Maine, which would be devastating to the economy, to force her to comply with federal law. Yeah. Note that when Joe Biden issued executive orders, if people on the right opposed them, they went to court. If they lost, they followed it. But this is a neo-Confederate idea that goes back to 1832 with South Carolina and Tariffs, and in the 1850s in the South when the antebellum South said, we're not going to listen to the federal government. The federal government said, then you're in insurrectionary mode, and we know what happened. We have 600 sanctuary jurisdictions in the United States on matters of illegal immigration where they say we're not going to turn over illegal aliens that have committed a crime and are held. We're not going to turn them over to the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The same issue now with trans. Janet Mills may not know it, but she's an insurrectionist. She's a neo-Confederate. She is taking states' rights to the extreme. Rather than saying, I oppose the federal government, I will go to court to stop you, but if I lose, I will comply because the states are subordinate to the federal. She's not doing that. She's right in the spirit of the old Confederacy. The other issue, very importantly, is the trans issue itself, and I want to be very careful. Transsexualism, transgenderism is an ancient phenomenon. It appears throughout the medieval world, it appears in late antiquity, it appears in early antiquity. I can cite you chapter and verse.
I think Victor Hansen's point in going back to like it's a historical phenomena. I think his point there is to be sensitive because he does say that a few times and to show people that hey, you know, it might seem like this is some new phenomenon and like it's like exploded. He's like, but it's not a new thing. It's not a new thing by any means. But what he does touch on is the fact that the numbers in which people want to transition or say that they want to transition have gone up. So that I do think is a little bit of a facade. I don't think those numbers are real numbers. I think a lot of that is linked to other things, but he goes, nonetheless, he mentions this to say that this is not something new that is happening right now, that this has happened throughout history.
From the poems of Catullus to the novels of Satyricon, of Petronius of Satyricon, of men who dress up like women, both as transvestites, who are still, I guess you'd say, heterosexual, but they have a fetish to wear women's clothes.
Yo, W chat, shout out in the chat. Spring Hill, what's up? How you doing? Hit that like button for me, guys. It's free. It takes 1 minute. Don't be petty.
Are that who really want to be women. In the case of a poem or two, they castrate themselves. It's found in ancient history. And statistically, if you go back before this controversy happened, it was a very small number of the population, about less than 1% identified as transgendered or transsexual. Then it became, in the last decade, the next civil rights frontier. And all of a sudden we had universities where students were polled at 10 or 20 or 30% thought they might want to transition. It became almost a cult following. But in the process, we did something that no one ever imagined. People on the left side of the spectrum, the liberal side, had always argued that under Title IX, women should get the same amount of support for their sports as men do, even if they didn't make the same amount of revenue in football, basketball, etc. And America came over to that position, slow, but maybe begrudgingly, but they accepted it and they promoted women's sports and it was successful. And now biological males with a muscular skeletal framework have enormous physical advantages over females. We all know that. And they are systematically undermining women's sports as a civil rights issue. And the left doesn't know what to do because it's also an anti-feminist, anti-woman issue. But there's another thing to think about.
And it's a reason why he's talking about this advantage, because what we've seen happen since trans women have been allowed to play in women's sports is not something that I think is surprising by any means, but we've seen a lot of these women who have worked most of their lives started swimming at ages of 4 years old, started playing sports at this age, and their parents were supporting them financially and emotionally and encouraging them, and they've done this for 15, 16, 20 years of their lives to work up to this certain moment, and then they either don't get a shot or they lose it to a trans woman. Now, this is the reason why this is not fair, because you do not see the flip side of this, which Victor Hansen does touch on this, but there is also a such thing as a trans man, right? Which would be an individual that's born a woman who's transitioning into a man. What you don't see is a lot of trans men going into men's sports and dominating. And he talks about the fact that there's a reason for that. The fact for that reasoning is because that those women who are actually, those trans men who are actually biological women, they do not have a physical advantage over biological men, which is the reason why when the biological men are transitioning into women, they tend to go into these sports and they tend to rack up trophies. They tend to place, where when people compare it, they will say things like this person placed number first or second on a women's team compared to a men's team, they would be number 27 or number 43. So, that usually sends a lot of the non trans women into hysteria because they kind of know that the numbers are going to look like that, right? So I like the fact that he touches on both, and he talks about the fact that we see a huge advantage here, but we don't see it on the flip side, and it's a reason for that. So he's saying that's the reason why the left or no one really can argue that there is no difference between men and women. He's like, there absolutely is a difference. There's a vast difference, and when biological men transition into women and play in women's sports, they prove that there's a vast difference.
There is transition or transsexual males. These are people born female with all the characteristics, muscular, skeletal, of females, of women, and they then either have operations or hormone treatments or both and become men. And guess what? When they compete in sports, they don't do very well. In other words, transgendered men cannot beat biological men, which brings up the issue. If you're transgendered, isn't there still a difference biologically, hormonally?
Yep, absolutely.
From people born into that sex? In other words, if women transition to males and they cannot beat biological males, why do we keep insisting that males who transition as women are no different than biological women, when in fact we know they are, they know they are, and Donald Trump has tried to address this issue both in purposes of honesty and fairness and equality for women, and these state governors and legislatures that are resisting him are really breaking federal law, but more importantly, they're echoing and they're resonating the old Confederacy. Thank you very much. This is Victor Davis Hanson.
They're representing the old Confederacy, which we know led to the Civil War. This is very interesting to see because the governor, and from what I understand, whenever someone is having this conversation about the governor in Maine now, especially I'm referring to today where we saw Pam Bondi talking about the fact that the DOJ is going after Maine as far as funding. They're suing them. I believe it's their Department of Education because they've tried to reach out to them numerous of times and to no avail. They have not gotten a response or been able to reach anybody. So now they're kind of at a point where they're like, okay, you know what? This is what's going to happen because President Trump gave you a deadline and you are not abiding by the laws of the federal government. And then that puts Pam Bondi in position to say things like, which means that the federal government reserves the right to revoke any funding that you're receiving from us, right? Now, she's not totally wrong in this. If you're opposing the federal government, you're not abiding by the law. This is going to be hard. I know it was going to be hard for some states because there are some states, especially sanctuary states, that are just, they don't want to change this, A lot of people have said because of this, the governor of Maine is very anti-feminist, anti-woman. And I can understand where those claims would come from. Some people might say they're overzealous, but I don't think that they are. I can understand where some come from. If there were any type of common sense in this type of law, and the only way it would look like common sense to me is if, we could say trans girls were allowed to play in sports with girls, right? So that would be a biological boy that, I don't know, let's say he can play in sports with girls until he's 10. And then past the age of 10, he can't, right? That would make sense to me, right? Because that's usually long before a boy goes through puberty, muscle mass changes, hormones are raging, and then he starts to become a lot super stronger than a girl, even though at a very adolescent age, we can even still see it then, right? But okay, the extreme leftists want to act like there is no difference. No, there really is. So some common sense to me would be if a Democrat came in like that, and I only give that leeway because it's they're not going to obviously honestly give this transgenderism thing up. I don't know why, but when it comes to trans women playing in biological women's sports, they're not going to give it up. It's funny how we haven't seen the flip side coming out, right? You don't see any trans men, again, which I said would be biological women, coming out and protesting and saying things like, we should be allowed to play in the NBA or we should be allowed to play in the NHL. You don't see this happening on the flip side. And I think that in itself should be an indicator that there's still a vast difference, even if someone is transitioning hormonally. So we will see what happens. I'll continue to cover the story of the governor of Maine, because it looks like, you know, her response was, I'll see you in court, to the DOJ. And now Pam Bondi and Linda Mahone have said, well, she's right. She will see us in court. So we'll just have to continue to follow that. I mean, man, they could just follow the law, but I get it. All right, so Fox News, right? Political insanity. It says Newsome mocked for Trump tariffs lawsuit. Okay, Gavin Newsome is suing his president. Let's take a listen.
All right, you ready for this? Hello and welcome everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Sandra Smith, and joining us today is Ainsley Earhart, Fox and Friends co-host. Trump writing on Truth Social, quote, Japan is coming in today to negotiate tariffs. The cost of military...
Okay, so I'll read this for you guys. It says, Japan is coming in today to negotiate tariffs, the cost of military support, and trade fairness. I will attend the meeting along with Treasury and Commerce secretaries. Hopefully something can be worked out, which is good. Great for Japan and the USA.
Support and trade fairness. I will attend the meeting along with Treasury and Commerce secretaries. Hopefully something can be worked out, which is good. Great for Japan and the USA. The negotiations with Japan mark some of the first trade talks since President Trump implemented his sweeping tariff plans. At least 75 other countries have also reached out. California Governor Gavin Newsome says he's taking Trump to court over these tariffs.
Yeah, I bet.
Today I announced a lawsuit on behalf of the state of California suing the Trump administration. California is the largest manufacturing state in our union, one of the largest trading partners around the globe. No state will be impacted more than the state of California as it relates to the unilateral authority that's being asserted by the Trump administration to impose the largest tax increase in modern American history.
All right, so Rachel, I mean, he is talking about California. I mean, this is one of the largest economies in the world. There's a lot at stake here. Will he get anywhere with this, and will other states follow suit?
Well, one of the things about Gavin Newsome that we all know is that he's a very calculated politician. But I'm scratching my head. Does he want to make Japan great again? Does he want to make the globalist elites great again? I can't imagine, filing a lawsuit against...
Are you looking for the most affordable way to add electric heating and cooling to your older home? If that's
against my own country, trying to fix a system that's rigged against your own country. It's just, it's political insanity. One note, I know you want to get everybody else's thoughts. Amazing, Donald Trump saying, I'm going to sit in on these meetings. This is a man with a work ethic that is so beyond, but also he's not leaving this to chance. This is his idea. He's been calling for tariffs specifically against Japan since the 80s, and so here he is in this moment on the second term. He's going to sit in on these negotiations. He's determined to do this. By the way, I asked him in my interview with him if he wanted to make tariffs a replacement for the income tax, to which he said yes.
Yep.
He said, no one's asked me that. All these scholars.
And this is funny because even though she says that Trump has been talking about, having trade conversations and bringing Japan to the table since the 80s. And that's actually a fact. I've said it a couple of times here on the channel when we've been live. I've said, you guys go back and you research this stuff and you do your due diligence. You'll see that Trump has been talking about tariffs long before his second term, in the 80s, in the 90s, and you guys will see it. He used to bring this stuff up a lot. And he did, in fact, say that at one point in time, tariffs were pretty much the only working currency in America, and it was the reason why there was no income tax. So I know that would be something that would be an ultimate goal for him. No, he hasn't went on record and to say to everybody the reason why I'm pushing so hard for the tariffs is because I want to get rid of income tax. But if you've followed him, his campaign trails, and you watch him when he does his press conferences, this is something that he's talked about often. He's gone back to the 1800s numerous times, and he said that there was a point in time where tariffs made this country so rich that there was no income tax. And this is what a lot of people don't pay attention to. They're so busy just hating one side instead of doing their due diligence and actually getting the information that they don't even realize that this is actually something that Donald Trump would prefer to have. If he can get this to a certain point to where there was no income tax on the American people, that's actually what he would want. But people who do not follow him, or because they just don't like him and they didn't vote for him, they don't want to learn anything. So they won't even take the time to find the information out.
Others have not even asked me that, so that was a great interview.
I'm an ASU grad, so is Joe Concha, so go Arizona State.
And External Revenue Service, isn't that part of what they're going to be doing for us?
Yeah. We're going to have more on that interview in just a moment. But Laura, I mean, this is the president choosing to personally sit in on these meetings. Why is this so important to him?
Well, this is what Donald Trump does best. He has been a negotiator his entire life. You have to remember, he was a businessman, and he got some of the greatest deals in the world done while he was the president and CEO of the Trump Organization. Look, the power that the president of the United States has it cannot be overstated. The fact that he is going to sit in that will mean that there will be a lot of pressure on Japan to come to the table and really kind of try to meet them in the middle here. I think it's amazing, though, to see Gavin Newsome, who seems to be on the wrong side of every single issue yet again. And it sounds like his voice was needing maybe a little bit of rest. Maybe instead of talking and doing these lawsuits, he should just take a break and take.
Hey, W Chat, what's up, Cody and Colby? What's up? Thanks for stopping by again. Hit that like button for me, guys. Thanks. Say what's up in the chat.
Take a step back would probably be better for California as a whole.
All right, I'm getting so excited here. I'm dropping papers. So, Joe, talk to us about this. I mean, could this set the stage for productive talks going forward with other countries?
That's the thing here. I see a long game forming. 2 weeks ago, we saw volatility, and we saw a stock market where people were starting to get nervous, obviously, about their 401ks. That has stabilized. Now we're starting to see results. We've heard about 150 countries coming to talk to the president. And let's say this scenario plays out for a moment. United States gets to 0 for 0 tariffs, not just with Japan, but with Europe, but with India, but with countries like Vietnam, for example. Then all those countries say, okay, we're all going to go to China, along with the US, and say, all right, unless you go to 0 for 0 as well, we, Europe, Japan, Vietnam, we're going to slap 145% tariffs on you. China will have no choice but to negotiate, and Democrats, if that scenario plays out, we have a massive free trade zone, obviously costs come down in this country, Democrats are going to be like in Sherwood Forest wilderness for a very long time because they came out in opposition of this, something that they used to support, by the way. So,
which is very much a fact. They used to support it. There are videos out there where Democrats are talking about why tariffs are important and why we should impose them and how they help a country. But the minute that they saw Trump doing this and they heard him talking about it, they're like, this guy wants to impose tariffs to make the United States poor. He wants to take away from the working people. And there are literally videos out there from not that long ago. Chuck Schumer from not that long ago where he's talking about, yeah, tariffs are a good thing. We should impose tariffs. This is why the Democratic Party is having a problem right now because extremely tone deaf. They are contradicting their stories like from history up until now. And it's just, you know, they're so out of touch with the American people. It's been a little bit hard to watch.
Oh, if Donald Trump's biggest bet of his life, and that's what these tariffs are, ends up playing out, 2026 and 2028 is going to be ugly for the Democratic Party.
You know, Ainsley, I mean, I know you have been talking to companies on Fox and Friends and business owners who, some of them support these tariffs, some are eager to level the playing field in this country, and there are others who will directly be impacted by this. You have to imagine that Gavin Newsome is hearing from them and answering to them. Does he have a choice?
You know, Gavin Newsome, I don't think, this is when I hear him talk, blah, 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 blah. This is not going to matter. We're dealing with Donald Trump here. He is so powerful. This is a huge win for him. Every morning we're saying the same thing on all of our shows. We're saying we need some wins. We need some deals. We need some 0-0 deals. And that's what we'll probably get. I'm confident we'll get that today. Japan's not, they're no dummy. They know that we help them with their military. That's why they're not reciprocating tariffs on us. And so they're coming to the table and they're the first ones. And they have said
The Tokyo prime minister or leader, negotiation leader said if you're the first one to the table, it's more advantageous. And it is, because this is going to be the headlines. The stock market's going to do better if there's a deal. And Donald Trump is opening the doors for other countries to do the same. And that way, China will be isolated. It's a huge win.
Very calm markets today. It seems like with this pause, they've been able to sort of collect their thoughts, the markets, and watch where all this goes next. Meantime, as I mentioned, Rachel has this exclusive interview with President Trump on Fox Noticias, where she asked him about these tariffs. Listen.
Yep, let's listen.
Los aranceles van a reemplazar el income tax.
You know, you're the only one that's asked me that.
So this is what she said to him, because they have the subtitles right here. She says, will the tariffs replace income tax?
El income tax.
You know, you're the only one that's asked me that. Oh, I deal with all these big financial geniuses. Nobody ever. There is a chance that the money from tariffs could be so great that it would replace. You know, in the old days, about 1870 to 1913, the tariffs were the only form of
Correct.
money. And that's when our nation was relatively the richest. We were the richest.
All right, I reach up and high five you for the question, Rachel, because that is on the mind of a lot
That
of
is a
people right now.
great
So we're not
question,
making an answer.
Rachel. Yes.
I mean, I just can't imagine. Like, we just had tax day. Imagine if we didn't have to pay taxes.
Yeah.
Talk about those midterms. They would be, or the next election. They would be amazing. He sees tariffs as another form of revenue. In the interview, I said, well, how much are they bringing in? And he was like, billions and billions every single day. And so we'll see. But this is a man who is negotiating at all moments on our behalf. It's just really remarkable how much time he is put into this. As you said, Joe, he's betting everything on this, but he's also had a lot of time to think about
I
it.
just want to know where the orange outfit came from. It's tremendous. Everybody's asking about it on set. Sorry, Sandy.
Thank you.
And we loved your attempt to get him to speak Spanish.
Yeah. You know, so on my Instagram, by the way, I juxtapose his pronunciation, which is really quite good, next to Si se puede from Jill Biden. Remember, she tried to say Si se puede? Yes, you can. So even his pronunciation's better.
That was so funny. She told him to say, make America great again. And how do you say it?
Haz América grande otra vez.
He said, America grande.
Close enough.
It's the first time I've never heard my father-in-law speak another language until you got him to do it, Rachel. So kudos to you. That was great.
Could have done it in 5.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. All right. Part 2 of Rachel's exclusive sit down with President Trump today, 4 p.m. Eastern time on Fox Noticias. Rachel, thank you so much. We will all be tuned.
And that's something that I'm actually going to cover probably a little bit after this. So when I'm done this live stream, I'm going to go on the streaming software and I'm going to play 3 stories for you guys that I wanted to cover, but I didn't want to drag this one on too long. Plus, I try to put out a couple of live streams a week for you guys, as long as it's on the days that I'm streaming. So with that being said, I thought it was great that Rachel asked that question, because now, to this point, a lot of people have said, you know, the reason why there's so much chaos and why things aren't really working out is because Trump keeps saying tariffs, 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 and he's talking a lot about tariffs, but he's not saying why he's using tariffs or why he wants to use tariffs. And this is where I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, are we even watching the same things? Because President Trump has said this over and over again. He's going to use the tariffs to, one, pay off the tremendous debt we have. He's not going to pay it off, but he's going to try to get it down. There's no way. Like, it's way too high. So, but he can put a dent in it depending on what he cuts, what he goes into, what he takes away from, what he charges other countries, which, if you guys think about it and you understand tariffs, because we talked about it here on the channel a lot, I've even put certain people on for us to watch together so you guys could see, you know, Charlie Kirk, Bill O'Reilly, just certain people I know who are breaking the tariffs down well, just so my audience can understand it. And it might be people they might never watch, but these are people who I watch on the regular. The tariffs were going to be one of the first things President Trump would use to start getting America substantial income and paying down the debt, because the tariffs were one of the categories where we were probably the most deficit in. The tariffs were was the category where it's like we have one country having 41% on us and we might have 3% on them, or another country has 250% on us and we might have 9% on them. And whether you guys believe the numbers that I'm saying or not, it's true. So I do encourage you to go look it up for yourself, because even before President Trump dropped his personal tariffs for here in the United States. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, she even was displaying a couple of numbers and signs with different graphs on it showing what other countries were charging the United States in tariffs. This is how I know that Japan is charging us 700% for rice. So a lot of people aren't getting happy about China and Japan China and Japan. President Trump and Japan sitting down, or the administration in Japan sitting down to talk about tariffs. But I think it's pretty ridiculous to have 700% on rice. But a lot of people don't know that. A lot of Americans don't know that Japan has a 700% tariff on us for just rice. Because if they did know, there's no way that they could be upset at President Trump putting just a 50% tariff on them. So this is why a lot of the times I don't get worked up or overly emotional about this stuff, because if you just take the time to listen, you can tell that a lot of people who are pretty hysterical over tariffs, they don't have a grave understanding of them. So, you're in unknown territory. So it's a scary thing for people when they don't know what's going on. That's where all of the confusion is coming from. All right, guys. So with that being said, we're going to switch gears a little bit and go over Senator John Kennedy's channel. Kennedy, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. So he is referring to President Trump. I did get a chance to watch this clip beforehand. He's describing what President Trump is doing, how his persona is coming off to the world and to people in America. And he's also clarifying how he feels about what he's seeing. Jake Tapper puts his take on it, and Senator Kennedy interjects, and tells him what he sees, instead of totally agreeing with Jake Tapper, which he really wouldn't. But I just appreciate some of his commentary on it, so let's watch.
Joining us now, Republican Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana. Senator Kennedy, always good to have you. Thank you, sir. Your state exported $10 billion worth of goods to China just last year, more than it shipped to any other country. In 2023, Louisiana's overall export of goods accounted for more than 30% of your GDP. This is all according to the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative. How worried are you about this trade war with China and its potential impact on the jobs of hardworking families in your state?
Well, we don't know yet. I listened to your prior guest, the gentleman you interviewed, predict that civilization is going to melt, and I don't see any indication of that. I heard you comment about Mr. Dalio saying that the world economic structure is going to break down. I don't see any indication of that. The dollar's a little bit weaker and interest rates have gone up. Here's what I see. I see a lot of uncertainty. And I think to some extent, it's intentional. If you listen to the president's aides weekend before last and then listen to them this weekend, you don't have to be Einstein's cousin to figure out they were saying things that were inconsistent. Now, that raises one or two possibilities to me. Either it's intentional or these folks aren't competent to manage a food truck. Now, I know them. They're intelligent people, whether you agree with them or not. So I think the administration, for whatever reason, is obfuscating a little bit. Maybe it's part of the president's negotiating strategy. I just don't know. I do know this. Tariffs are important, but so are high prices. Yep. The trade balance is abstract. The price of eggs is concrete. And we need to be spending a lot of time on reconciliation, redesigning the tax code, deregulating the economy, reducing spending to get prices down. That's it. Is at least as important as tariffs, in my opinion.
Well, let's talk about the so-called big, beautiful bill President Trump is urging Congress to pass, which will lay out most of the president's agenda, including tax cuts that you just mentioned, additional border security, and more. The House of Representatives passed its framework last week. You're now calling for a 60-day deadline to hash everything out before calling in President Trump. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, he wants to get the bill to the president by Memorial Day. Are you confident that the House, the Senate, and the White House can make a deal on what should be included?
Here's what I think will happen, for what it's worth. And before I leave the subject, just remember, Jake, that there's no tariff ferry you can go to get instructions on how to do this. This stuff's more art than science, and I think we're living that experience. Now,
I do agree with Kennedy when he says this. This stuff is more art than science. And when he says there's no tariff ferry, I believe he's saying that because even people to the stature of Kevin O'Leary have went on record to say, you know, Trump and Bill O'Reilly, Trump is doing this very different than even any president who's used tariffs in the past has done it. Normally, if they're going to impose tariffs, they might do one country at a time, maybe one or two countries at a time. No president has went in there and decided to attack tariffs on a global scale. So that's another thing that the world is able to be so critical of, is because he's doing it on a global scale. You know, if he would have came in and just said, you know, I'm going to like wait for China to come in and then Japan, and then I'm going to wait for the Philippines and then this place, then it would look totally different. But because he just made a huge announcement and he just had all of these countries, you know, including in it, everybody's kind of just losing their mind. When if you think about it, you know, I could put a militaristic mindset on it and say one shot, one kill, right? Like in his mind, he's just like, listen, instead of doing this with all of these different people and dragging this out, it's like one shot, one kill. Everybody gets this. This is what it is. And then even when he paused it, that was his mindset, because when he first went in and he showed his little graph, you know, when he made his announcement, when he went in with a 50% mindset. So he still went in on a one shot, one kill mindset, in the sense that everybody, I'm pretty much charging you 50% of what you're charging the United States. So it's like, okay, I thought that was pretty fair, because he could have came in and he could have been pretty heinous about it. You know, there are countries that are charging us, again, like I said, 700% tariffs on rice. So he could have been like, okay, you want to charge 700%? Well, then I'm going to charge 425. But he didn't, you know, he could get that ridiculous, but he didn't even do that. He just came in halfway, right? And then even on the pause, he's like, all right, that's fine. I'll pause, with the exception of China. One shot, one kill. Everybody gets 10% until we renegotiate. So it really just depends on how you're looking at it. And people are still worried. Like, their money's effective, as Senator Kennedy said. Prices are still high on certain things. So, you know, people are going to be worried. Some are going to be hysterical about it. Because my wife does a lot of food shopping and supermarket shopping and things like that, she tends to look at prices much more often than I do. So according to my wife, she feels like prices have gone down, right? Like, so I might want to argue back and say, I don't know, babe, it still seems the same to me. But she says no, because I remember when this was $8 and now it's $6.10, or it was $8 and now it's $7.50. And it still sounds high, you know, or maybe it was $8 and it was $5.25. But literally, as I'm listening to her, I'm like, okay, well, you know, these, whether they're pennies, quarters, or dollars, they all add up to something. So this counts. So some people are able to see where prices are, in fact, going down. And other people are like, no, I'm not buying it. I'm not seeing it. Everything is still so expensive. So I think that, you know, we still got to give it time to see it play out. And that's why I thought Senator Kennedy's initial response to what Jake Tapper said, he said, well, we don't know. You know, I heard you interview your last guest, and they said that they believe the economy will go into a meltdown. He's like, and I don't see any evidence of that. So we know Senator Kennedy can be pretty straightforward.
to answer your question, Mike Johnson did a great job getting the House on board. Here's what I predict will happen. Mike and Jonathan and the Senate will give their bodies 30 to 60 days to try to come to a consensus on what's going to be in the bill. We won't. It will be like herding butterflies. We'll end up having to go to the president, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, and say, Mr. President, arbitrate this, tell us what you think should be in, what should be out, and then President Trump is going to have to go sell it. Otherwise, I think we could spend a year on this and get nothing done. Sometimes we do spend a year and get nothing done. That's not a good thing. I mean, the economy needs a little boost right now in light of all the tariff uncertainty and the reconciliation bill, and designing a tax code to stimulate growth, and designing a tax code that looks like somebody designed it on purpose can fit that bill, in my opinion.
So you just talked about the need for President Trump to explain whatever is agreed upon. I have heard from Republicans on this show and others saying that they didn't think President Trump, as great as a communicator as they think he is normally, fully explained what he is trying to do with these tariffs. In other words, yes, he has talked a lot about tariffs, but the idea that he is seeking to reshore manufacturing to the United States, and that this is going to be a difficult period, and that there are going to be higher prices, and on, that has not been, in their view, adequately communicated to the American people. What do you think?
I don't believe that, Jake.
Well, here's what I think. I see what you see. I think I know what's in the president's heart, but I don't know what's in his head. The people you're talking about are right. The administration has not given one clear rationale for its tariffs. I think that's intentional. That I don't know, but my guess is it's intentional, and that it is part of the president's negotiating strategy. But Jake, I don't want to feign understanding here. I don't know, but that's my best guess, knowing how the president operates.
Republican Senator John.
I mean, the president believes.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the president believes if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. Like him or dislike him, agree or disagree. Right now, he's being a grizzly.
Republican Senator John.
Very true. And he's like, listen, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly, you know? And that's what I said. This is the reason why the world can be so critical about the way President Trump is doing things, because historically, presidents that have used tariffs in any way, form, or fashion, they have not pretty much laid them out on a global scale to over 70 countries or over 100 countries. It hasn't been in that type of form at all. So the fact that they're seeing Trump do it this way, it's shocking to people. It's causing confusion. So we're going to move over to it's Fox News talking about Letitia James, Attorney General of New York, Letitia James. But first I want to read some of this article to you guys. It says, Trump administration refers New York AG Letitia James for possible prosecution over allegations of mortgage fraud. Oh boy, there we go, guys. James is accused of listing a home in Virginia as her primary residence and listing her father as her husband on mortgage applications. Listing her father as her husband, okay. New York Attorney General Letitia James has been hit with shocking allegations by the Trump administration accusing her of mortgage fraud. In documents obtained by Fox News channels, the Ingraham Angle, the Federal Housing Finance Agency, FHFA, sent a criminal referral to the Department of Justice on Tuesday, accusing James of mortgage fraud. The FHFA Director, William Pulte, said in a letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi, William, sorry if I said your name right, I'll call you William P., that James appears to have falsified records to meet certain lending requirements and receive favorable loan terms. Why would she use her father instead of her husband? Maybe her father has better credit. I mean, I don't see, maybe her father already owns property. I don't see the point in that, but. So, Pulte or P cited a property in Virginia that James allegedly claimed as her principal residence and a property in New York she claimed as a 4-unit structure instead of 5, which he said could mean she was able to get a different and more favorable loan. In response, a spokesperson for James' office said Wednesday morning that she has been focused every single day on protecting New Yorkers, especially as the administration weaponizes the federal government against the rule of law and the Constitution. She will not be intimidated by bullies, no matter who they are. Okay, so you're saying your president's bullying you. All right. Fox News contributor and George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley told Fox News host Laura Ingraham the irony of James getting accused of falsifying records is perfectly crushing. This is a person who prosecuted Trump for everything short of ripping a label off a mattress. And among the charges that were brought in New York, and not just the civil but the criminal case, was making false or misleading statements to financial institutions. Turley said. As for James, if we apply the Letitia James standard that she created, there'd be little question here. This seems pretty straightforward. Oh boy, see? That's that good old judge how you want. Oh man. You have to deal with people how you want to be dealt with people. He explained the Trump administration is saying this was not her principal residence because as a New York elected official, she has to say her principal residence is in New York, where she resides. James is also accused of saying her father was her husband to file as a married couple, Turley added. To file as a married couple, okay, all right, because what, her and her husband have different last names? The Supreme Court just stated earlier in March in a case called Thompson that they want to see knowing false statements under sections like 1014, not just misleading statements, Turley said. These are misleading statements. Either it's your principal residence or it's not. Either you're married to your father or he's your father. The DOJ did not respond to Fox News on the matter. The issue has been prosecuted in the past, but as Turley said on the Graham angle, the documents themselves are quite damning. Okay, I'm going to stop there because I have a clip for us to watch regarding this. Fox News covered it, so let's take a listen. It says, Turley, the irony here is crushing.
Department of Justice making a move on Maine. Let's bring in back Jonathan Turley. Jonathan, your thoughts now that you saw the case?
Well, I think that Maine has a serious problem on their hands. You know, there is no entitlement to federal funds. Now, the Supreme Court says that the government cannot commandeer states. So the government can, in a heavy-handed way, violate the Constitution. But it was in Rumsfeld versus Fair, the Supreme Court voted unanimously to say that federal funds could be withheld from states for the failure to comply with federal law.
So that means that when Attorney General Pam Bondi gets up and she says that we are thinking about removing funding from Maine for them not following federal law, she's not in contempt. She's not in the wrong for saying that or wanting to do that. There's actually law in place that says that the federal government can do that if you are in contempt of law or you're opposing the federal government. So this is, and they're covering this as far as like Maine not wanting to switch over, meaning like not wanting to take their trans athletes out of biological women's sports. And then they're going to go over to Letitia James.
Now, in that case, there was a thing called the Solomon Amendment. In this case, they're arguing, look, this is Title IX. And in 1972, certainly the drafters had no intention of extending the definition of gender this far. The irony is that just this week, the British High Court...
Yeah, they had no intention on extending the definition of gender this far. That's the only reason why things like this are even considered a conversation today, which is crazy. And then we're going to have this guy ask him, well, how will we have these straightforward answers until we get the definition of what is a man and what is a woman? And I mean, I know he's saying that because everybody needs to have that clear answer because the radical left has just done a number. And for some reason now people don't know, you know, that a woman is a woman and a man is a man. And one of the easiest ways to tell the difference between them, other than physically, is the fact that one of them can get pregnant and one of them cannot. But, you know, they're struggling. So I understand it's a struggle.
Court ruled on their Equality Act that transgender individuals do not meet the definition of a woman or the definition of sex. And so that ruling just came down within the last 24 hours from one of our allies. So this is an issue that other countries are grappling with as well.
But Jonathan, do you think this is going to force, to that point, the Supreme Court to rule what is a man and what is a woman? Because there's no way this can be enforced unless we finally get that definition, right?
That's exactly right. And I think this is heading their way, like so many other things. This is going to force them, in all likelihood, to deal with this conclusively. They've had opinions on both sides. It's not clear where the majority stands in past cases. This will force the issue. And I expect that the Trump administration has an advantage, at least on some of this, and a major part of this funding.
Yep, they do have an idea what a man and woman is. That's more than a lot of other people.
Jonathan, if you look at the cover of the New York Post, it says a Tish best served cold. It's about Letitia James, who, remember,
The Attorney General.
The Attorney General who put
He's already
President
laughing about it.
Trump on trial, and it cost him $454 million. That was the judgment. Well, now she is being hit with a federal criminal referral for alleged mortgage fraud. Apparently, she has this house in Virginia. Is that the state, right? And she put her dad as her husband. She's being accused of that on the form. What were some other things that
Her main resident as Virginia.
That's right. She put her main
bunch of
resident.
mistakes.
So is that illegal? What happens here?
It is illegal. There are people who are prosecuted for listing residences as their principal residence in order to secure loans. There was just such a case last week in Baltimore. The district attorney was convicted of a similar case. There are plenty of these fraud cases that are brought by the Department of Justice. Now, obviously, the irony here is crushing, but this is a New York Attorney General who said that these are not just technicalities, that they will enforce adherence to these types of rules. She also said that Trump, in his case, could not claim that third parties filled out these forms. She said, you are ultimately responsible for documents filed under your name.
Sure. So, Jonathan, when you take out an application on a mortgage, which becomes public record if it's a mortgage through public facilities, and you write down your job title is Attorney General, State of New York. My primary residence is in the Commonwealth of Virginia. You would think that would be a head scratcher. But to your point about third parties filling out forms, do you think she's going to come back and say, look, I had somebody do that, they made some mistakes, my bad?
Yeah, that dog won't hunt because James shot that dog. I mean, the fact is that when Trump was up, that was one of the arguments that she said she found no credence at all. I mean, this is like Donald Trump saying that a house in Pennsylvania is his principal residence as opposed to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Exactly.
There's a serious problem with that. Now, one of the things that is raised in this referral is that each of these errors or false statements work to the advantage of getting better terms on the loans.
Right.
Now, there's another irony here. James used a New York statute against Trump.
And this is where it's so if the DOJ really does go after her and she's saying things like, I won't be bullied, you're not going to be bullied. Because if the reason why you even use these people, falsified any type of information, was to get a more favorable loan, that's already a crime. That's already a crime. This is why Charlie said, either you're married to your father or he's your father. Either it's your primary residence or it's not, right? So that's why the gentleman said this is like Donald Trump saying that his primary residence is in Pennsylvania instead of Pennsylvania Avenue where the White House is at. Yeah, because as the president of the United States, he has to reside in the White House. He can't just be in any random house and say that that's his primary residence.
Referral is that each of these
and just to let you guys know, that's pretty normal for like a state elected official, right? So this is the Attorney General that we're talking about. There's no way that she could be the AG of New York and her primary residence is in Virginia. There's no way. That would be an erroneous statement if it is a statement on any paperwork at all. So that can't happen. But this also just occurs for employees of banks. There are people who even in the state in which I live in, if you work at a bank, and my state has, like, you could say, a banking district. If you work in the banking district or at a bank in the banking district, they usually require them to live within a certain mile radius in that area, right? So it's not like you can work in the banking district in Manhattan and you can live like all the way on, I don't know, Staten Island. Like, you can't do it like that. Sometimes they require you to live in a certain radius. So if they're going to do that for an employee of a bank, of course the Attorney General wouldn't be able to live in Virginia.
Or false statements work to the advantage of getting better terms on the loans.
Right.
Now, there's another irony here. James used a New York statute against Trump that didn't even require there to be a victim, that no one lost a dime in the Trump case. And James said it didn't matter. She wanted more than the $500 million in that fine, even though the banks wanted more business with Trump. In this case, they will be able to argue that these were false statements that worked to her advantage.
Yep.
Now, the Supreme Court just ruled on one of these statutes it's a section 1014, but it narrowed the definition, but this would still meet that definition. These are direct false statements.
Wow, so in 83 and 2000, she had her dad as co-signer and listed him as her spouse.
Sounds like she's in trouble.
That doesn't sound right.
All right. Jonathan, thank you very much. I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilney.
You know, they said it sounds like she's in trouble. Yeah. So there's documentation that says that is something that she did. She falsified documents. She wrote an erroneous statement, so she falsified it. So there is a good chance that if the DOJ does bring charges against her, they will find something and she will probably be prosecuted. Because if they find out that her father is on there and she claimed him to be her spouse, and they find out that she also put down a residency in Virginia to be her main residence, all of these things are going to work against her, and they're eventually going to be able to bring charges against her. So let's see if Letitia James stays the AG of New York. All right, guys, so switching gears a little bit, still on Fox News, Sean Hannity and Stephen A. Smith had a conversation about Stephen A. Smith's consideration for the presidency. He goes on record to say why he's even considering it. Who told him he could consider it, who has faith in him and who does not have faith in him doing something like this. And Sean Hannity just kind of pushes back and lets him know. Stephen A. Smith kind of alludes to the fact that he almost has no choice to do this. To some extent, I can see that because the Democratic Party hasn't been able to put up a serious enough candidate for the people to consider. I will keep saying John Fetterman is one. I don't like his vote. That happened not too long ago in Pennsylvania where he actually did advocate to keep trans athletes in biological women's sports. Again, it's not because I have anything against the LGBTQIA community, but I know that if he wants to be a presidential candidate in 2028, if that's on the forefront of his campaign, the Democrats are not going to win again. So that was a little disappointing to see John Fetterman do that, but nonetheless, I think he's somebody that the Democrats need to keep their eye on if they can stop arguing with each other and with him. So, because of all this madness in the Democratic Party, this is why Stephen A. Smith and Sean Hannity, who are friends, are having this conversation. So let's take a listen.
Here with more ESPN host, our good old friend Stephen A. Smith. What do you mean you have no choice? You have a choice. You don't have to get involved in politics. You can be a commentator. You can get into the political arena. You can give your opinions. You can try to impact policy. You don't have to run for president to do that. So you have a choice. Why do you say you have no choice?
I didn't make an announcement. Because I didn't make an announcement that I'm running. I made an announcement that
I have no choice.
Excuse me, don't answer a question and interrupt me before I even get a chance to answer your question. To answer your question directly, yeah, sure, I got a choice. But at the end of the day, here's what it comes down to, Sean. You're absolutely right. I am a pundit. I am a commentator. I am a journalist by trade and what have you. These are the things that I care about, and I care about having a voice, and I care about making an impact and making a difference, especially when it comes to what's in the best interest of the United States of America. There's no question about that. The other side to it, however, is that I've had folks coming up to me, like I said, elected officials and others, including my own pastor, A.R. Bernard from the Christian Cultural Center here in Brooklyn, New York, who looked at me and said, hey, show respect to people who believe in you and respect you and believe that you could do good for this country by at least leaving the door open. You never know what God has planned for you. That's years down the road.
I've been told the
Stop saying no. And that's all I said.
Look, Sean Hannity says, okay, I've been told the same thing. Fair enough, right? So he must hear Stephen A. Smith say things like this in reference to his pastor. But it's true. I think when he tells him, show respect to people who feel like you can do this, there's probably people telling him like, yeah, man, I can probably see you doing that, or, trying to encourage him, and he's just like, no, I'm not going to ever run for president, or no, I can't win, or like, no, I don't want to do that. And his pastor's just saying, hey, at least leave your heart open. Like, you have no idea what God has in the cards for you. So this could be something that, hey, maybe right now it looks crazy, but the Lord works out for you a couple years from now, and it doesn't look as crazy. So just stay open to it, and Sean Hannity's like, okay, I've heard the same thing. I think that's hilarious.
That's all.
So I watched this poll come out, and I did give you some of my thoughts on it. I have more to share with you.
Yeah.
I don't believe that poll. That's my gut instinct. I think it's probably, I would say, the first poll that came out had you at 7%. Maybe you're at 5, 6, 7%. Do I think that the party that is now led by AOC and Bernie Sanders and Jasmine Crockett and the radical left would ever accept you or want your input or go along with your...
What is Shen
So
Yun?
Stephen A.
What
Smith,
is this Chinese
he
company
doesn't
that you
believe
see
it himself
everywhere
because he
who
says
actually
never.
Shen Yun is
If we look at what Sean Hannity's saying, he says, what makes you think that this type of party, he's naming things, would go along with you? And Stephen A. Smith is like, never.
Go along with your... That's my point.
I don't believe, do I believe that people would have a conversation with me and get my perspective on things? Sure. Do I believe they would ever really, really support me? Meaning those that have been entrenched within the Democratic Party now and for the last several years? Absolutely, positively not. I saw the poll. Listen, I'm not an expert in this, but I've been following politics for a very, very long time. We understand what comes with the process, particularly if you're a Democratic nominee. The super delegates got to approve for you. You got to get a whole bunch of support from all over the place for you to even be the nominee. And you know people are going to stand in your way. Look at what happened. I mean, you can look at Andrew Cuomo, you can look at Al Franken, you can look at a lot of different things. And at least on the left, what they say is that they eat their own, especially when they don't like you. So they don't know me. The chances are they don't like me. You got people that's craving to go I'm sorry, go ahead.
In the third term of Andrew Cuomo, who took out Andrew Cuomo? Do you think it was the Republicans in New York? Or do you think it was the Democrats who maybe he was a threat to them because they thought he had political aspirations?
Well, they thought that he was in line to fight for the presidency, fight for the Democratic nomination. And at least on the left, that's even those folks is speculating about it. But in the end, here's what it comes down to. Poll comes out about 2 months ago or so. I'm at around 7.5% or whatever. Ever since then, I've been in the news ad nauseum every single damn day, and suddenly I'm at 1%. I don't believe that for a second. That's not how this works. But what I'm saying to you is this: at the end, you want listen. I'm not putting gasoline on anything. I'm just not running. And what I mean by that is that I have a voice. I care about the issues. I'm going to attack them. I'm going to address the issues that need to be addressed, no matter how I feel on the other side of the aisle. I'm an independent. I'm going to say what I feel. I'm going to speak my mind, and I'm not going to run from anybody. So it doesn't even matter running from office. I'm not going to run from them.
You're not talking about being an independent. You're talking about trying to change your party. Your party is a Democratic Party, and you're trying to, have it both ways. You want to either you're an independent or you're a Democrat.
What you say? That's what y'all say. That's what your politicians say. There's a whole bunch of American citizens out there that don't want anything to do with the fringes. That whether you're center left or center right, they want common sense, man. They want to listen to people that have common sense.
Do you align?
I'm telling you who I am.
The Democratic Party or the Republican Party, or are you more independent?
I'm more independent. But the reality is, what's the chances of an independent winning a general election? Slim to none. Is that not true?
The Democrats.
See, and Stephen A. Smith said slim to none. And I said slim to none. He almost said zero because it's true. Bill O'Reilly went on record to talk about this, and he said that he would love to see somebody from the independent party win. I wouldn't mind it either. I like bipartisan, so I do think we should have more than one. I don't think America should be the type of country where we just have one particular party. But he also went on record to say that the reason why we don't really see an independent ever really take office is because they have issues with campaign funding. They never really can raise the funds the proper way to kind of kick the campaign on, and that's why towards the end we're usually left with choosing from the Democratic or the Republican Party. But RFK did get more support than Kamala Harris, and he was an independent running. So that's something to pay attention to.
You talked about billionaires and prominent Democrats, and you've been kind enough to share privately with me, and I would never reveal my sources, the number of people that have reached out to you and who these people are. I think that's pretty enticing. I think some of them probably they're trying to get intel for other candidates that they're really supporting and not for you. They're not really there for you. I think some may sincerely be there. But at the end of the day, do you want to be part of a party that led to the greatest national security threat in our history with wide open borders and 12 million unvetted illegals, including known terrorists, murderers, rapists, cartel members, gang members? Do you want to be part of a party that systemically lied about
let me retort
Joe
with that.
Biden's cognitive health? That lied about the economy? Do you want to be part of a party?
Here we go.
Do you want to be part of a party that cares more about the rights of men to play women's sports, the rights of the illegals, over the safety of Americans? I have Rachel Morin's mother on this program tonight. Do you want to be part of a party that thinks it's a constitutional crisis if, in fact, you eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse? Is that what you believe? Because I don't think you do.
No, I do not. Okay, and I spoke adamantly against some of those things that you articulated on my own show and on this show, along with various other shows. But let me tell you what I do want to be a part of. I want to be a part of a party and a part of an American society that looks at those actions that you just chronicled and says that has no business in the United States of America. We can do better. Let's exercise common sense and decency. Let's understand that even when we look at the right, every damn thing ain't wrong about what Trump do. You might have a problem with how he's going about with the tariffs, but his position about the tariffs isn't totally wrong. Guess what? The border is better since he's been in office because we no longer have open borders, but we can still look at him and say, you know what? With Obrego, the bottom line is this: the immigration, a judge ruled for protection for the kid, and the Supreme Court voted 9-0 in order for him to be here. Go back.
That's not true, Steven. Why did you say that? Okay, so he said the Supreme Court, when it comes to Obrego, the Supreme Court, a court did a ruling that he needs to come back. The Supreme Court did a ruling 9-0 that he should come back. That's what he said, right? Let's run it back. That's what he said.
For protection for the kid, and the Supreme Court ruled for protection for the kid. The immigration, a judge open borders, but we could still look at him and say, you know what? With Obrego, the bottom line is this: the immigration, a judge ruled for protection for the kid, and the Supreme Court voted 9-0 in order for him to be here. Go back and get it from El Salvador. And
it's interesting because the first time I watched this, I didn't say anything about it to myself, but it's interesting that Sean Hannity didn't correct him here. That's actually not true. So yesterday, when we were on live, Stephen Miller, who is the White House, I think he's President Trump's White House policy director. Let me see. Yeah, Stephen. That's how you. White House Deputy Chief of Staff. Okay, so we had this guy right here, Mr. Stephen Miller, right? You guys have probably seen Stephen Miller on the White House lawn talking to the press, in the Oval Office with President Trump sometimes talking to the press, especially if AG Pam Bondi's there and Secretary of State Marco Rubio's around. So Stephen Miller yesterday was on the White House lawn and he was talking to he was interviewing with Fox News, and the gentleman said a couple of statements and he interrupted and he said, I'm going to interrupt everything you just said because it's actually wrong. He talked about how the mainstream media has been spinning this story the last 72 hours. Now, this was yesterday, about how there was a 9-0 decision for Abreu Garcia to come back to the United States. And he said that that's actually not what happened. And he's disgusted at the fact that this rhetoric's out there, this false narrative's out there, and the truth has been spun. He said, actually, when we appealed what the lower court did, the Supreme Court unanimously gave us a 9-0 vote in President Trump's favor, saying that no lower court, or no lower district court, has the authority to tell the president or the Secretary of State how to exercise their authority, right? So that's actually what happened. It wasn't actually a 9-0 vote that Abreu Garcia had to come back to America. So see that right there, and this has, it was only 22 hours ago, so it has 73,170 views. But this is Fox News. They have 13.5 million subscribers. So a lot of people will probably see this in the days coming. And the fact that we have Stephen A. Smith on there saying that there was a 9-0 vote for Abreu to come back to America, that's actually not a fact. It was actually a 9-0 vote in President Trump's favor, saying that no lower court can order the president or tell him how to exercise his authority, especially when it comes to foreign policy. So There's the facts, people.
Agree on some things, we can disagree on some things, but in the end, it's about a core decency that we are devoid of right now in our politics. I hope somebody from the Democratic Party steps up. I hope I light a fire under them and get a more qualified individual in this mix so people can stop asking me this stuff and I can enjoy my life. But if it continues to get worse, all hands on deck. All of us should consider running for crying out loud rather than dealing with this nonsense.
No, all of us should not consider.
Let me ask you this. Do you believe in the environmental policies, climate alarmism, Green New Deal policies? Do you agree with the DEI
climate alarmism, Green New Deal policies, DEI
agenda of the Democratic Party? Do you support woke in America, transgenderism? Do you think one tax dollar should ever go?
It's not as finite as you try to make it.
One tax dollar ever go into any of those programs, especially abroad? Why are we giving a penny to Harvard University when they have a $50 billion endowment? Help me with that.
See, and all of those topics are probably not topics that Stephen A. Smith is ready to even touch on, right? Because at some point he does say, I don't know the answer to that. He says, ask Barack Obama. And I'm like, no, please do not ask Barack. But I get it. Like, he's basically saying, like, right now, he's not really very knowledgeable of all of those topics, right? If he wants to be a serious candidate for president in 2028, he would have to learn about the Green New Deal, right? And he would have to learn about DEI and wokeness and how many dollars have been going abroad to support things like that. Like we sent $20 million to I think it was Afghanistan for a Sesame Street show, $40 million to another country for transgendering mice, like things like that. So Sean Hannity's asking him, like, do you agree with, all of these things? And like Stephen A. Smith's going to go on record to say, like, he doesn't know the answer to some of those things. But if he wants to be considered a serious presidential candidate for 2028, he has to learn up on those things, because those will be things that if he even made it, right, to any type of presidential debate, he would be challenged on all of those things.
I don't know the answer to that question. Well, what if I find out there's a pretty decent answer for that question? I don't know the answer to that question. When you bring up Harvard, you would think with an endowment like that, they wouldn't do it. But why has this federal government spent years giving it? Maybe it's because they make a contribution to the American fabric that you're not articulating on this one.
Maybe it's because they've been stealing the money from American people, Stephen. I doubt Harvard's making any type of contribution like that.
He don't know the answer to that question. Just like you ask questions about the left, I can ask questions about the right too. Let's just be fair about it. Everything, we don't have to agree on everything.
Why are you paying for an Ivy League elitist institution when maybe we could be shoring up community colleges, trade schools, so we can be helping the children of the hardworking men and women that don't have an opportunity to ever think about an elite private school like that? I'll give you the last word.
Okay, that's a fair question, and let's hope Trump, the president of the United States, has a big time answer for that. I get that part. I understand what you're saying. As a common American citizen, you look at your frustration. Excuse me, he's cutting them off. But why? But why? The intent matters. How you go about doing things matter. All of those things come into consideration.
These
I understand
Ivy school. We can't be paying these Ivy school brats tuition. If they want to go to an Ivy League school, get the money yourself, get it from mommy or daddy, or go to work, save up, and then go pay for it yourself. How's that?
And when did you come to this conclusion? When did you start saying this? Were you saying this before when Obama was in office? Because I'd love for you to interview him and ask him that question. I'm asking. I'm not accusing you of not saying it. I'm asking. Ask Obama. Ask a Harvard student. Ask Barack Obama that question. He spoke adamantly of this.
I didn't get it. I took out a student loan. I paid back every single penny of it. I paid for all my college myself. Checkmate.
So did I.
Boom.
You ain't the only one that did that. You're not the only one that did that. I did that as well. But
here's the
that particular
revelation
student from Harvard has an ability to make a major contribution to our society. We got to entertain that. Scholarships are given out all the time by everybody.
Even after a $50 billion endowment? No, I don't think so, Stephen. That's not true.
To evolve politically, you are going to find you are more in agreement with things that I believe in and the values that I believe in than the values of this party that you feel compelled and have no other choice to align yourself with. Because you do have a choice.
Let me tell you something.
And
I'm about free market capitalism. I'm about national security. I'm about controlling our borders. I'm about all of those things. But here's the problem. The minute Sean Hannity says, you're going to find yourself agreeing with me, that's when you lose me. That's the last thing I want to.
Yeah, so these guys are friends, but it's funny to even hear it because the comments are so mixed on this. You know, you got some people saying about Stephen A. Smith, this is such a clown, this guy's not serious, he gets too emotional. Now, you know, as I'm reading through the comments, I can see why they're saying he gets too emotional because we could see, you know, his passion in his conversation, right? It depends on how you read that. Some people might see that and say, this is an emotional man. And some people might see that and be like, Stephen A. Smith, he just has a lot of passion when he talks. So it's subjective as to who's watching him. For the most part, you know, I don't think he does race pandering. You know, someone mentioned that in the comments. I would say that over the last 5 years, I would say the better part of a decade, but meaning the last 5 years, so but a decade in total, that we've kind of seen Stephen A. Smith kind of veer a little bit towards the center. I'm not going to say right, but center, not so hard left, not so extreme. And I can appreciate the open-mindedness, but nonetheless, I agree with Sean Hannity. He does have a choice, right, as to what party he's really going to represent, if he's even going to decide to run at all, if the numbers are there for him to do it, right, because he might not even make it based on the numbers, right? But those are definitely things that he wants to learn up on, that Sean Hannity asked him about. Some of those topics, if he even makes it to a presidential debate, he will be challenged on those, and the American people will be paying attention to how he answers them, right? So those are some things that I'm hoping that if he's even a little bit serious about this, that he's gonna like really study up and learn some things and, you know, be prepared to do something like an actual presidential debate. But it was interesting to hear him say it, you know. He's been on the news ever since when the poll predictions first came out and they had him at 7%. You know, he's like, now every single day I've been in the news and I'm down to 1%. And Sean Hannity says, yeah, because you're throwing fuel on the fire. You know, so he's like, listen, I'm just trying to live my life. So we'll see. It seems like there is some support there, not a whole bunch. I'm not very confident in the level of support I'm seeing now, but it depends on how, if I'm honest with you guys, it depends on how much longer the Democratic Party is going to be treacherous. Because the longer that they stay as tone deaf as they are and out of touch with the American people as they are, it is going to be more favorable to the American people that they put up somebody who's not a career politician or who's not a traditional politician. And Donald Trump has paved the way for that to be more acceptable to the American people. And a lot of people have went on record to say that, and I do believe that they're right. So guys, with that being said, here we are at the last clip of the live stream. Shout out to Cliff Buell. We'll be reacting to one of his videos today, a YouTube short. It says, this girl denies him for good reason. It says she left him shook. So this is going to be something about dating to some extent. I don't want to ruin it. So let's take a listen. Shout out to you, Cliff.
We need more of this.
I cannot kiss you again. There's a reason for that. I'm going to marry someone someday. It might be you, it might not be you, and I do not want something with me kissing another man on television.
You?
If it's you, then we don't have anything to worry about.
I certainly thought that this was going a different way. It obviously is a dating show.
Yeah, that doesn't matter, obviously, that's what I believe, and I don't want that of me on the anywhere, because I want my husband time more than that.
Well, I do very much respect it, and I understand it.
Do you actually?
I do.
I can give you a hug.
I'll take that.
I think romance and intimacy is something that you can't rush. It takes time. That's just a boundary that I have, and I will not be crossing it.
We need more.
Okay, so she's on a dating show, and this guy is actually trying to make a move on her and give her a kiss, and then she pulls back and she's talking about why she's not willing to kiss him on TV or be intimate with him, and she's alluding to the fact that one day she's gonna get married, and she doesn't want her husband to see her on television kissing another man. She doesn't want anything like that to be out there. So I'm going to try to read some of the subtitles and pause it for you guys so you can see what she's actually articulating to him.
Or this.
So he goes in for a kiss there. She rejects it.
I cannot kiss you on camera.
She says, I cannot kiss you on camera.
There's a reason for that.
There's a reason for that.
I'm going to marry someone someday.
She says, I'm going to marry someone someday.
It might be you.
It might be you. It might not be you.
Not be you, and I do not want.
She says, and I do not want
something of me kissing another man on television.
Of me kissing another man on television.
You?
If it's you, then we don't have anything to worry about.
She says, if it's you, you don't have anything to worry about.
I certainly thought that this was going a different way. It obviously is a dating show.
Yeah, that doesn't matter.
He says, I obviously thought this was going to go a different way. He said, it's obviously a dating show. And she says, yeah, but those are my values, and that's what I believe.
And that's what I believe, and I don't want that of me.
She said, and I don't want that of me, meaning her kissing another guy. She's like, I don't want that of me on the internet anywhere.
On the internet anywhere.
Because I want my husband to have more than that.
My husband to have more than that.
Well, I do very much respect it, and I understand it.
Do you actually?
I do.
I can give you a hug.
I'll take that.
I think romance and intimacy is something that you can't rush. It takes time. That's just a boundary that I have, and I will not be crossing it.
Yeah, so she says she thinks being romantic and intimacy, it takes time, and that's a boundary that she has, and she's not willing to rush into it. And this is literally what a lot of Christian dating can look like. Sometimes not. Sometimes we have Christians even crossing boundaries, right? I was one of them. So yes, that does happen, especially if you're not being discipled at the moment or you don't have anybody talking into your life. Much more prone to slip up, right? But I love the boundaries that this girl displays on national television because this is something you don't see a lot today. And it's something that I know if it happened on live TV the way I think it did, I know there was such a mixed reaction to this. Like, I know there were some women that were like, ew, what the hell? Like, why is she being like that? Like, you know, just trying to find all negative reasons as to why, like, this is 2025, like, she's on a dating show. Like, girl, if you didn't want to kiss somebody, why are you on a dating show? Like, I can hear all of these things. But I can also see another group of women that's like, wow, that's different. Like, I've actually never seen anybody do anything like that. That's actually pretty brave. Like, I don't know if I would do that on a national television show. So I think that this was extremely, extremely brave. I wish I saw more of this. I love the boundaries. You know, it's because it's a simple thing. I can't tell you, and I grew up in this era, and we still have this era. But, you know, D pics and T pics and all of these letters and adjective pics, and it's like everybody wants to send a picture of this and let me get a picture of that, and if you really like me, I can see a picture of this. And this was something that growing up I was adamantly against this. Like, this is not something that I did. So I know a lot of people can get on here, right, and they can be like, man, you're gonna say you never sent this type of pic. I could say I've never sent that type of picture to anybody, and I was hoping that I would be able to be this age and still be able to say that to a group of people and not be a liar, because it was a hard thing for me too. It's crazy when you're out there dating people and the things that they want to see that they're not even entitled to yet. The things that they want you to do that I shouldn't even be doing that for you because I'm not married to you. You're only a boyfriend or you're only a girlfriend. So why would I even sacrifice myself and my body like that? And you might be around, you might not. That's why I love the way that this girl reacted. She said, I might marry you. She said, but I might not. And she says that if I do marry you, then there's nothing to worry about, right? Because I'm not on TV kissing another man, and now my husband has to be able to see that on YouTube or years from now. So I just think it's a huge level of respect she has for herself, and it's a really great boundary to have in place. Shout out to you for catching this clip, Cliff. I appreciate you and clipping it for us and for your channel. You got 1 million views on this clip, so shout out to you, buddy. All right, guys. So with that being said, that is the end of the live stream. I always enjoy hanging out with you guys every single day except Sunday. So we will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow we're actually going to be on the rest of the week around 4 p.m. I believe it's going to be somewhere between 3:30 and 4 p.m. And that's just because a little bit of a schedule shift there with some things. So that's the better time for me going forward for a couple of weeks. So I will see you guys tomorrow around 4 to 4:30 p.m. Let's say 4 to 5, just in case something else in between occupies my time. But with that being said, guys, we'll be chilling on the corner tomorrow, as promised. So with that being said, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, love yourselves and love one another, and be peaceful.